Many modelers, especially beginners, may struggle with kind of figuring out what kind of industries to add to their model railroads. And here are two types that are easy, simple, and flexible that anyone can add to their train layouts regardless of era or location. The first is the team track. Most towns, large or small, had these. And these were typically located next to where the freight station or passenger stations would be. However, in later years where then the passenger service got discontinued or the freight station got torn down, the team track would remain because it still serves a purpose. Team tracks, again, these are very, very versatile. They come in very different, there are different variations, and you can almost assume almost any product can be shipped from or shipped to these locations. So this here example, the example right here, we have a typical team track here with here's a concrete team track, and we have a ramp and serving and a boxcar sitting at it. We also could have a team track could be like this one in the foreground, where you have just a single track actually ending in a ramp. This could be used to facilitate the unloading of like trucks or tractors, farm equipment. It's also a possibility that the team track be some sort of combination like this, where you also have a ramp and a dock for both purposes. A truck could back up into here to move things in and out of freight cars, or use for unloading off of flat cars. Now, of course, a team track doesn't need to have a dock. Here's an example on my HO shelf layout where the team track is just a gravel lot and a single track for a single car. So here's an example here of a team track with a flat car with a load on it. Now here, this actually can represent, you can have things that going to and going from. Here's an example of this flat car on this team track could represent lumber going to retailers, such as lumber yards. So people could bring their trucks and their forklift. They could unload this car here onto their trucks for retail distribution, and then of course later, then the flat car is picked up empty by the railroad. Now, on the other hand, you could assume that this flat car is delivered empty to said team track, and then you're going to have a mill, for instance, that is not served by rail, and then takes truckloads of lumber to the team track, and then loads this flat car for distributions to, say, larger city markets. And one advantage of team tracks is, again, they are very versatile. We saw the previous ones where we had a box car showing at the box car with the dock, the flat car at just a track without a dock. You could also have a refrigerator car like this. Again, you could assume the same kind of flow. There's either a refrigerator car that could be that trucks could unload it to send it to retailers, distributors that are not directly accessed by rail, or maybe you could have farmers and other agricultural producers that could load this car because they're not directly served by rail, and it could be loaded up and then sent to larger markets. Of course, it doesn't necessarily have to be a house car like a box car or a refrigerator car. It could be a gondola load of pipe, as an example here. So you could have this either be something that either gets loaded, or pipe might have come from some industry or agricultural use. Will pick it up and then take it to their location. So almost any types of freight cars could actually show up here. Whether docks like this are obviously going to facilitate things like refrigerator cars and gondolas and flat cars and box cars, but team tracks can also be used for things like tank cars. If somebody can access the outlets on a tank car, it's not necessarily all that uncommon for especially smaller tank cars with the specialty products to be connected up to it. But the only things that you probably wouldn't necessarily see at team tracks would be things like open hoppers, things like that, because those usually require the coal trestle, the trestles where it's dumped dumped down below beneath the rails. But in older times, you could get coal shipped in a regular gondola such as this, and people will actually have to manually shovel it out of a gondola car potentially into a coal truck. So there's a possibility for earlier steam era railroads to use even coal at a team track. Things like stock cars could also work. Maybe you don't have a pen, but somebody with a stock truck with portable ramps, you could potentially load these up as well. Open. Now the more modern version of the team track falls into the second example, and this is the transload. And typically, transload type areas are where you might have a single track, usually in a paved area. The example here would be more of a modern version on my layout for one of my later eras where the old TOFC dock is no longer used anymore, and then it's been repurposed to be a lumber transload where you have stacks of lumber, and then the flat cars are being loaded because they serve mills that are not directly rail served. So those mills bring their trucks here, and then they get those. Then they will load up flat cars directly. This can be as simple as what I've shown here. Transloads typically can be quite on the larger side. Some will actually have, maybe this track doesn't, this track here will actually terminate in a warehouse. So you could unload things like box cars with have more sensitive commodities. Transload areas could have things even like small container type yards where it's more of an intermodal transfer, where again it will serve businesses and other industries that are not rail served, that can bring their commodities to the facility to be loaded onto rail cars, whether it be flat cars, double stack cars, or whatever kind of cars that they need, or it can also work the other way. Stuff can get unloaded and then sent out as well. Again, expanding the reach of rail without having to worry about putting rail spurs everywhere. Many of the larger transload areas can also have break bulk kind of facilities where they might have different types of storage tanks. You could have the same commodities. These transloads also doing for tank cars and covered hoppers. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be in a urban location such as this. I have seen where we literally had a siding, a gravel siding with a gravel lot around it, and then we just had strings of refrigerator cars being loaded with bundled Christmas trees. This is another way you can instantly have almost any kind of industry or use or car type that can show up to these, and then you don't necessarily have to worry about, well, this is so and so industries going to so and so location with so and so car type. Them here that this one spur here could have again multiple car types over a given operating session. So if you're struggling with trying to figure out what kind of industries to add to your layout, maybe it's your first layout, or if you're interested in getting into some basic operations, consider adding the team track or a transload area to your layout. And you can be very flexible on what you add and add what gets shipped to and shipped from, and then it will add in really a infinite amount of opportunities for your layout you can expand on over time.